Hi, I'm Kelli Maddock, and today I'm presenting on Carriage of Antimicrobial Resistant Flora and Enteric Pathogens among veterinary professionals in the Upper Midwest. This project was funded by the Upper Midwest Agricultural Safety and Health Center, or UMASH, and it was conducted with Drs. Tekla Webb, Paul Carson, and Gerald Stucca. Antimicrobial resistance, or AMR, is a significant threat to public health worldwide. There are reports of livestock and companion animal-associated transmission of pathogens such as methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, also known as MRSA or MRSA, as well as methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus pseudointermedius, or MRSP. But there are few reports that actually describe the risk of AMR bacteria transmission to veterinary workers, although many reports exist for healthcare workers. So our study goal was to determine the carriage rate of antimicrobial resistant commensal bacteria in veterinarians and veterinary technicians, and to correlate AMR bacterial carriage to professional risk factors such as primary species contact, personal protective or PPE use, and hand washing behaviors. For our methods, veterinarians and veterinary technicians were invited by a social media and professional organization advertising to provide self-collected nasal and rectal swabs. Participants answered risk-based survey questions to determine primary animal exposures, PPE use, and hand washing behaviors. Swabs that were submitted to the NDSU Veterinary Diagnostic Laboratory were then plated to culture media. Bacterial isolates were identified by standard microbiological techniques and also through molecular methods such as matrix-assisted, laser desorption ionization, time of flight, or MALDI-TOF. And once they were identified, the isolates were then subjected to antimicrobial susceptibility testing. All samples were reviewed for presence of normal flora or other pathogens that might not have been identified by in the study aims. So the isolates of interest for nasal samples were Staphylococcus aureus and Staphylococcus pseudointermedius, and for rectal samples, they were Salmonella species, Campylobacter, Shiga toxin-producing Escherichia coli, and extended spectrum beta-lactamase or ESBL producing Enterobacterales, and vancomycin-resistant Enterococci or VRE. So 59 collection kits were returned with 67.8% female, 30.5% male. As far as job roles, 59.3% were veterinarians, 39% were veterinary technicians. Nasal swab carriage rate for methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, or MRSA, was 10.2%. MRSP, or methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus pseudointermedius, was 6.8%. And regarding the rectal swabs, the carriage rate was no findings for Salmonella, Campylobacter species, Shiga toxin-producing Escherichia coli, or ESBL producing Enterobacterales isolates. Vancomycin-resistant Enterococci were at a 1.8% carriage rate. We have pie charts summarizing these results, as well as the carriage by practice type. And so we actually, through the study, found a high prevalence of MRSP and MRSA carriage among veterinary professionals. This study found that carriage was more than double the estimated rates of carriage. So community carriage of MRSA is estimated to be about 1.5%, whereas healthcare worker carriage of MRSA is estimated to be about 4.5%, and for veterinary workers, it's estimated to be around 3.5%. And so through our study findings, we found that the primary species contact for MRSA carriage was 33.3% for small animals, whereas 66.7% for primary contact with beef cattle. And of our MRSP carriage, 100% indicated cats and dogs as the primary species contacted professionally, which makes sense because this is a common normal flora isolate for these animals. Enteric isolate resistance patterns were unremarkable. So our limitations, we had a good response rate at about 53.6%. However, we suspect our response rate may have been higher if we could have recruited participants in person, but because of COVID, we were not able to recruit in person. Participants were not asked if they're experiencing signs of gastrointestinal illness. So it's assumed that each person was symptomatic or asymptomatic, and so it would be unlikely that we would have found Shiga toxin-producing E. coli or Campylobacter species. We did interestingly find one enteric pathogen, Eromonas, which could be associated with beef cattle work, and did suspect that there was a higher rate of carriage of group B streptococcus than the general population, but more analysis needs to be performed. Hope you enjoyed our presentation. Thanks for listening.